Hello everyone, welcome back to another Swift tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how we can build a movie searching app. So we're going to be building this app right here. So once you open it up, we got this field that we can type a search into. Let's go with Disney, hit return, and we get a bunch of Disney movies back. And we get the image of it, we get the title, the year. We can tap on a movie and it'll load up information about it in IMDb, like so. We can always go back. There's quite a few results that get returned. We can of course close this, reopen it, and we can type in something else like fast. We get Fast and Furious. Let's change this to be Pixar, maybe. That should give us something. Pixar, we get this stuff back. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at how to build this from absolute scratch, which includes showing this detail page, these custom cells, making the network call to get the data back, so on and so forth. So with that being said, make sure you smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Helps out the channel a lot. Subscribe if you're new for daily Swift videos, and let's get into it. First, we're going to open up Xcode and create a new project. We're going to stick with a single view application. Let's give this project a title of Movie Searcher. And let's save it on our desktop and start talking about the pieces we need to create this app. So let's go to our view controller and we're going to write down the things we need just so we have like a running list of what we need to do. So the first thing we need is our UI, user interface. So a table view for a list of results as well as a field to search for actual movies. We need a way to make a network request to actually get our movie list. And we need a way to tap a cell to see info about the movie. And we also need a custom cell to show the movie. So I think those are the core components we're going to need. So let's do this jazz in order. So the first thing we need is a user interface. So we're going to need two outlets for that user interface for the field on the table to actually go and manipulate it. So let's start off by creating two IB outlets in here for a UI table view as well as a UI text field. And let's call this one field. Let's delete this comment that Xcode gave us. We're also going to need to assign the delegate and data source for the table to basically show stuff and handle interactions. And we're also going to assign a delegate to the field because we want to actually kick off the search when the user hits the enter key, and we can get that event out of the delegate. So let's come up here and add the UI text field delegate, the UI table view delegate, and lastly the UI table view data source. Let's come in here and assign the delegate to self as well as the data source and the fields delegate to self as well. Before we implement these delegate and data source functions, let's head to our main storyboard and drag on in our elements. But let's actually also expand Xcode to give ourselves a little more screen real estate to work. So like I mentioned, let's drag in first a field, drop it on in, and let's also come back here and drag on in a UI table view and drop it on in. We're going to add some constraints to properly lay out these elements. If you're not familiar, I have a separate video on this, but let's come down here basically and hit 10, 20, 20, and the height of the field will be 52. Click on the table, and we're going to also apply constraints to this. This is going to be 10, 10, 10, and 10. And let's right-click this and connect the field outlet to the field and the table to the table. And that actually wraps up what we need to do in the storyboard. So now we can go to our view controller and stub out our functions for this delegate and data source. Fun stuff that we've got going on. So let's do the field first. We're going to need a function to search for the movies itself. So search movies. We also need to capture that event when the user hits the return key, and that is text field should return and we're just going to call this function in here. And in this function, we want to have the keyboard for the field go away. So we're going to say field resign first responder. Before we actually do the network call stuff in the next part, let's do the table. So the table, we want 3 functions. The first one is going to be number of rows in the table. The second one is going to be self row. And the third one is going to be did select row. So for each of these, let's do a quick implementation that we can clean up as we progress. So number of rows wants basically an integer to be returned of how many rows to show. So we're going to create an array up here, and it's going to be movies. And it's basically going to be an array of movie objects. And I'll create this movie thing in a second. Let's come down here and just throw it at the bottom of this file. Let's create a struct called movie. And we want to return basically in here movies.count. For the actual cell that we want to return, and let me zoom out so you guys can actually see the names of these functions. For this actual cell that we want to return, we're just going to return a UI table view cell for now because we're going to create a custom cell later. And for this did select function, we're going to say table view deselect that row first and foremost, and we're going to show movie details. So now we should be able to hit Command B, not have any errors, hopefully. Make sure you have a simulator selected up here. And I think I have a simulator open already, like I do. So when we hit run, which is Command R, you should see your app pop up and open, and nothing should hopefully be crashing, like so. So let's now move on to the next part, which is creating a network request. So that's going to go on in this function where we're going to say search movies. The first thing we want to do is make sure that there is text in the field and that the text is not empty. And if it is empty, we're just going to return. Otherwise, we're going to proceed with a actual request. So let's come over to my browser that I've got open here, and you'll see that I have this JSON response coming back from this API. Let's look at this URL. This is a free service that I'll provide this link to in the video description, omdbapi.com. There's an API key and a search parameter as well as a type, which is movie. So you can basically search for movies. And you can see also over here in this tab, we have this website open, which is omdbapi.com. You can come on here and hit this to get your own API key, 100% free. They email it to you right away, so I encourage you to do that. And this third page I've got open is info about a particular movie. So we're going to use this to figure out how to show a movie in our app when the person selects a movie results. So let's take this URL up here, and we're going to first create the network request with this hard-coded URL just for the purposes of testing, and then we're going to dynamically update the URL to take in our actual text. So to create a request, we're going to say URL session shared data task with, and we want with URL with a completion. URL is going to be a URL with the string we just copied. Let's paste that on in. Don't forget to put an exclamation point at the end of this as that's required. Put a return before that completion block parameter. Just makes it look cleaner. This completion is going to come back with data, response, and error. And in here, we want to make sure that there is no error and that data does exist. And the third thing we want to do is convert the data that we get back to this movie struct thing that I put down here. So before we do any of that, make sure you come down here and do a resume. That's actually how you kick off the request. The naming is a little confusing because you're actually starting it, not just resuming it, but that's what Apple named it, so go figure. So let's come in here and let's do a guard let data equals data, error equals nil, else we're just going to return. So we've checked that there is data. Now let's convert the data, update our movies array and refresh our table. So how the heck do we convert the data? So Swift has this super powerful mechanism called codable, which lets us pass in data, and Swift tries to convert it to an object that has the same keys that are present in the data. So these are the keys: search, title, year, ID, etc., etc. So we need to create some structs that model this hierarchy that the JSON is in. So we're going to first come down here and add another struct, and we're going to call it movie result codable. There's going to be one property in here called search, which is going to be an array of movies. Make movie codable as well. Come back over here, and I'm just going to copy and paste this because we want to make sure that these keys are identical, including the case, like uppercase and lowercase. So let's just paste that in. Let's get rid of this. And let's also add a let in front of this. Each of these are strings, so copy and paste that in front of each of these, like so. Let's also get rid of this one. Now, one issue I see here is this type property word is reserved for the language, and you'll see an error pop up like that. We basically need to just add one more thing to allow this type to be in here because that's what the JSON uses. We're going to say private enum coding keys. We basically are going to supply in the keys that come back from the JSON directly. And we're just going to say case title. We're just going to match up the keys that we have up here. The ID we just did. The type we're going to say, instead of being type, let's put an underscore before this to get rid of the error. And we're going to say this type is equal to a type with a capital T. And lastly, let's not forget the poster. And I believe that about does it. Hit Command B to build. You should be successful in building, and all your errors should have gone away. So let's actually convert this data to this movie result thing that we just put together. The way we do that is with a do catch block. In other words, we're going to attempt to convert, and if an error occurs, we'll catch the error here, like so. Let's create a variable called result. It'll be our movie result. And we're going to say result equals try to use the JSON decoder to decode a movie result from the data. That's essentially how we convert. Super nifty. And we can ignore this warning. It's just complaining that we haven't used this variable yet down here. We're going to validate that the converter succeeded down here by unwrapping that result. We are going to update our movies array, and the way we do that is by getting the movies out of this final result thing, which is in the search property we added. And we're going to say movies.append content of let's call this new movies actually. Take this and put this here. And every time we search, we want to get rid of the prior movies. Let's see, why is this complaining? We need to put self in front of this. But as I was saying, we want to get rid of the prior results. So before we kick off this search, let's say movies.remove all. And at the bottom of this, we also want to refresh our table view, and we do that by saying self.table reload data. And we also want to wrap this reload call inside of a dispatch queue main.async. So I'm not going to get into the weeds of why we need to wrap it in this thing, but essentially this is how you should be doing any user interface updates. Next, let's actually just print out the first title that we're getting back in our results here, just to make sure that this whole nonsense is working. So let's do this, search first title, hit Command R, And if we've done everything right, we should be getting, I believe, Fast and Furious back because we put in the hard-coded URL. So come into this field, type in anything and hit enter. And the console, you should see the Fast and the Furious, like so. So now we don't always want to see Fast and Furious, so let's actually come up here and update this URL to take in the text we've typed into the field. Notice that in this example, I had fast and the space is updated with a %20, which is URL encoding. So we need to replace all the spaces in our entered text with a %20. So we're going to say replacing occurrences of string. We want to replace spaces with this. And we're going to update our URL to not only take fast and, but also take in any query that we type into the text field. And let's see, let's get rid of this print statement. And we're almost getting to the end of the video. So now we need to, let's see, what do we need to do next? We did the UI, we did the network request. Now we need to do two things, add a custom cell, as well as tap a cell to view info about the movie. So in the cell, we're gonna show the image for the movie, which is the poster, as well as the title and the year. So let's see how we could best do this. Let's create a custom cell first. So let's right click this, hit new file, stick with the Cocoa Touch class. We want a UI table view cell. Check this box. And let's name this movie table view cell. Make sure Swift is selected and save the cell. This cell is going to have two labels and an image view. The labels are going to be for the title and the year, and the image view for the poster. So let's create 3 outlets. Let's call it movie title label is a UI label. Let's copy and paste that. This one is going to get updated to movie year, poster. It's going to be an image view. Let's also update this to UI image view. We can get rid of this commented stuff that Xcode gives us. Let's put in 3 functions in here, or rather 2 functions. One is going to return this cell so we can register it to the table, and the other one is going to take in a movie and configure the cell. So the first one is going to return a cell to configure. The table is going to be func nib, well, static func rather. And it's going to return a UI nib. And a nib is basically a way to represent a cell, nothing more than that. Sometimes people get confused about what it is. It's the same thing that we named our XIB file over here. That's essentially what we're returning. We also want to return the identifier of the cell. So we're going to do that through a static property. And we're going to call it identifier. And that's going to be that. Let's see, why is this complaining? We're returning a nib. And it's because I put uppercase I, should be lowercase. The second and last function in here that we need is a configuration function. And we're going to say configure with a model, which is a movie. And we're going to say self.movie title label.text is model.title. We're going to say movie year label.text is model.year. And we're going to have to download the contents of the URL where the image is. So first, let's get the URL, which is the model.poster. We're going to get data from the actual URL. I believe it's contents of URL, like so, and we're going to pass in a URL object with this URL, and we're going to say, let's see, try to do that. And we're gonna say self.movie image view dot image equals a UI image with data. That's gonna be data. And if you hit Command B, your app should still be building, hopefully. Let's set up the actual user interface for this cell and connect the outlets. So we need an image and 2 labels. Let's expand this a little bit. Let's come on over here and grab a image view, drop it on in. Let's set some constraints to this. We're gonna say 10, 10, 10, and let's say the width is 200. And let's also grab a label, drop it on in, and let's say this is gonna be 10, 20, 10, and let's make the height 80. And this one is going to be our title, and we want one more label in here. Drop it on in, and we're going to add constraints to this as well. So 10, 20, 10, and 20. Don't forget to connect to your outlets and also set your cell identifier. So let's connect outlets first. We want to first grab the movie poster image view and drag it to this image. The next thing we want to grab is the movie title label and drag this to the top title. And let's also grab the movie year label, drag it to the bottom one, and let's set the cell identifier in here, over here. I thought I copy and pasted it, but apparently not. So let's come back and grab it, go back to this and paste it on in. And that should be our cell. So let's go back to our view controller, register the cell to the table, and update the function to actually return the cell, which is this one. And we should be able to run it after that and see what our actual results look like. So before we do that, let's register a nib for a cell. So register nib for cell reuse identifier. It's going to be this cell.nib, which is that function we made for its identifier. Let's come down here to this function and say let cell equals table view dequeue a reusable cell with an identifier for index path. And let's see, do we need an index path? We do, I believe, and we want it to be this type of cell. At the bottom, let's make sure to return a cell, and let's not forget to configure it with the current movie, which is the movies array index path.row. Hit Command B, should be running, hopefully, or building. Hit Command R, and let's search for a movie. So let's type in fast, and we should see results, hopefully, maybe not. So it looks like we got an error here. So let's see what we screwed up. So we actually typed in FST, so maybe that's probably why we didn't get results. Let's try fast. And if you look at that, we get the title, we get the year, and we get the title, or the image. So the sizing is a little screwed up, but we could definitely always fix that with our constraints. But let's search for another movie. Let's search for, I don't know, let's search for Nemo. We should get, hopefully, Finding Nemo. Looks like we don't, because we're not able to download data from this URL, which is why we crashed. So what you should do here is actually try. And what we can actually do is we can wrap this in an if let data. If the data is successfully downloaded, we're going to update the image and not just update it assuming it's successfully downloaded. And it won't crash. So let's search for Nemo again. And you can see we didn't crash and we got results back like so. And let's do that one more time with Just type in like Disney. Should get something back. There we go. Got some Disney movies back. And the last thing, the actual last thing we need to do, because I know I've said that a couple times, is when we tap on one of these rows, we want to show contents about the movie. And it's super simple to do that. If you notice the URL of the page where we're looking at movie details, it's actually just the ID of the movie that we have to put in here. And we can actually get that out of our results response pretty easily. And we can show a web view with that URL. So let's import Safari services. And what we want to do in this function, which is table view did select row, is we want to say URL is this thing. And instead of this hard-coded ID, let's pass in models. Sorry, we want to pass in movies, indexpath.row.imdbid, which is one of the properties on this movie struct. Then we want to create the view controller for SF Safari view controller with this URL. So it's a URL object with this string. Don't forget the exclamation point. And finally, we're going to present it with an animation. Hit Command R, and that should wrap up this app. So let's search for Disney once more. And we get all these movies. Let's pick this one. And it opens up something. And hopefully, in just a second, you'll see that it's content about that movie, which in fact it is. So that basically wraps up how we can create a movie searching interface. And we can actually also always swipe back from that screen to come back to our searching screen. But yeah, that does it. So a super quick recap, because I know I moved very fast for this video. Our view controller does a couple things. It gets actual content from the internet via a request. It uses a table view to show the contents. It uses codable to actually transform the response to something we can use. We've got two outlets for the field and table. Over here, we've got a custom table view cell with an image and two labels. And in our storyboard, we brought in our field and table view and connected the outlets. So fairly simple, but it's a pretty nifty app. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you haven't done so already, drop a like down below, helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you're new. Leave any comments. Did you enjoy the video? Was it too fast? Did I miss anything that you wanted to know more about? And I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.